ITIL. So you're getting a behind the scenes peek at what we're doing. The new ITIL AI governance publication is in final review stages and it will be released shortly. You can look for news on that and look forward for news on that shortly. But I'm going to give you some idea about the kind of issues, the kind of areas that we discuss in that book. So what we're going to talk about today, here's the agenda. The first thing, we made the claim in the advertisement for this webinar that ITIL will improve the speed and success of innovation in AI. And so I have to ask the question, does it really? Can I prove that ITIL improves the speed and success of innovation? Then I'm going to explore that a little bit, and then I'm going to ask about how organizations actually use AI. And the reason I'm asking that is not just because I'm curious, but because AI, because I am an IT service manager, I'm going to be expected to support that use. I'm going to be expected to develop services that effectively. So is being expected as a professional. The third thing we're going to discuss is how my strategy of our organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of activities that we will be expected to perform in supporting that strategy around AI strategy as well, which is, for example, who is defining that strategy? Is this something that we are involved with? If so, how do we get involved? If we're not involved, how do we manage in that situation where a strategy about a technology is being defined outside of our control? How do we deal with that situation? And then I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we have to deal with in managing AI. Just some of them, because I can't cover every single possible challenge. So what I did is I selected some of those that are most relevant to us. And then, of course, a very important question coming up with AI is, what is this going to do to our careers? If I want to grow my career as a service management professional or as a product management professional, what do I need to do? So those are some of the questions that I'm going to be talking about today. I will have some answers, but there's something very interesting about AI, and that is that it is still evolving. We still don't know all of the answers. In fact, we're still learning what some of the questions are. Where is AI going to go? How is it going to change the world? How are organizations going to be using AI? We know some of the answers to those questions, but we're still learning because AI keeps changing. And it's quite funny. I'll share one of my experiences about how quickly this is changing. Last year, I was doing a bit of research and I was reading about the latest AI technology and how it's structured and what it does and so on. And it was talking about the evolution of large language models. And in the article, it said, traditionally, digital technology has managed the situation in this way. And it described a scenario. Traditionally. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so they're talking about 20, 30 years ago, when we first started using robotic process automation and so on. Maybe that's what they're the traditional models of what we now recognize as being the early forms of AI. This was in September last year. But in fact, they were not talking about a traditional model that was being used 20 years ago. What they were talking about was the AI methodology that had been introduced in February of last year. So from February to September, the AI architecture that was being used had been invalidated and replaced. In just a few months, this is how quickly this technology is changing. So the best we can do as IT management and as service management professionals is to keep tracking these evolutions, these changes, and to keep adapting our approach to the way in which AI is changing. And I'm going to be talking about that as we go through the presentation. So the first question, does ITIL improve the speed and success of innovation? And I'm happy to say that it does. We did some research. This research was completed 3 years ago. We are busy updating this information, but as of 3 years ago, 75% of organizations were able to use, that used ITIL, were able to use ITIL to adapt to market changes and to future-proof their business. Well, what does that all mean? First of all, why only 75% of organizations that use ITIL? Well, most organizations that use ITIL don't start with innovation and strategy and building new capabilities for their company. They start by doing things like stabilizing the quality of IT services, improving the quality of business operations. So we see a lot higher benefits being achieved in those areas. But there are a significant number of organizations who use ITIL who have gone beyond those operational uses and are effectively using ITIL to address strategic issues. So adapt to market changes. What does that mean? It means that as cloud services emerge, as people switch from using computers to using their mobile phones, as the banking industry switches from traditional methods of transacting with their customers to using cell phones and SMS, organizations have had to change, and they've had to change to enable their companies and government entities to be able to meet the challenges of this new world. 75% of organizations that have used ITIL have effectively used ITIL to adapt to this emerging new technology, these new ways of doing things. Now, we had to ask some questions there. As you see, 2% of organizations, these are organizations who had not yet started applying ITIL effectively, but they knew what it was, but they hadn't really started initiating their projects or programs. 2% of those, in fact, found that without doing anything before they started, their services started going down. Their ability to innovate actually started going down. Imagine those organizations who are not using ITIL and who are not doing anything to deal with incorporating innovation. The figure is a lot higher. But organizations that had adopted certain ITIL practices within the first year, this is performed and managed. And which practices, by the way, and what do we mean by performed and managed? Well, what we did is we looked at organizations who are dealing with this particular issue, typically used practices like strategy management, service portfolio management, availability, capacity, service level management. That group of practices was used, and of course there are some additional, there is service design and so on and so forth, but that group of practices, they had decided to deliberately go out and implement some combination of some or all of those practices. And when they did that, 23% of the organizations saw that they had not been going backwards, but they also had not really progressed forward. So they'd stopped backsliding, but they were not yet capable of making large-scale transformational change to adopt to this new strategy. It was only after about a year of really successfully using these practices that organizations started to see the improvement happening. And it is then only after 18 months to 2 years, once these become innovative, sustainable, and there's continual improvement in place, that organizations really start to see significant growth in innovation. What do I take away from this? Number one, ITIL is never just, and you know this, I know I'm talking to a lot of very experienced people, so you know this. ITIL is never just you implement it once and walk away and it suddenly works. ITIL is a journey. It is a continually improving way of using the practices and capabilities that are described. It is adopting those things that are needed first and then building on them over time. So that's the first thing that I take away. It's a long-term journey, which involves maturing your ITIL practices. The second thing that I take away from this is that strategic change takes longer because it involves a lot more of the organization. So when you're improving and implementing incident management, for example, or incident problem and change enablement, if you're doing that, it can be done a lot more quickly because you're dealing with a smaller subgroup of the organization. You're dealing with individuals inside of the IT group that have control of the processes, the tools, and so on. When you're dealing strategically, you're working across multiple groups in the organization, some of them inside IT, some of them in the business operation. And that takes longer, and it takes a lot more capability, skill, knowledge than it does to do the operational activities. So the lessons here in terms of AI, if we're going to do AI properly, we cannot just have a 6-month project to adopt AI and it's all going to work. No, it is going to take us at least 2 years of sustained implementation, discipline, improvement, constant monitoring and adaptation to the way in which AI is changing if we are going to see successive innovation. Well, I look at that title and it says, improve the speed. It sounds like I'm telling you that it's going to slow you down. Actually, the opposite is true. The alternative is don't use any of the disciplines. Just go out there, take whatever AI is throwing at you, implement it, and you're done. Actually, the evidence is against that. Here's something that's happened in the industry. I don't know if you've heard of this, but do some research on this. It's called the AI junkyard. Or some variation of that. Just do a search for the AI junkyard, and what you will find is a description of all of the technologies that have been adopted in the early stages, and then we found out that there's a security gap, or it doesn't do everything we thought it would do, or somebody introduced another tool and they were politically more influential, so we replaced our tool with the new tool. And what you end up with is a junkyard of all of the AI tools that we've tried to implement in our organization, but which have failed for one reason or another and have been thrown out. Now, along with that junkyard is not just the tool. It's all of the work, the configuration, the connectivity, the use of data that goes along with that. All of the agentic models that we built, all of that effort gets thrown out into the junkyard and we start again. Now, tell me that that is quicker than taking 2 years to get your organization completely transformed and using AI. I don't think so. So what it looks like here is that we're taking a longer approach and it's a more thorough approach, but it is in fact a quicker and more effective approach. So, of course, you can experiment with that yourself, although I don't recommend it because it's very risky. I would rather suggest that you use the tried and trusted proven methods of digital transformation that are outlined not only in ITIL, but in other proven, tested frameworks. And other tested, proven frameworks, what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like COBIT. I'm talking about things like even DevOps, right? These are disciplines that have evolved over years, and we've learned from them. So we should be learning from them and continuing to learn from them on an ongoing basis. Okay, so yes, ITIL does improve the speed and success of innovation. But the next question is, how are organizations using AI? And of course, the question behind that is, what are we going to be expected to support? The model is listed over here. It is the 6 C's of AI. These are typical applications of AI that we use in organizations. So some of the AI tools that we're going to use are about using ChatGPT or Copilot to help us draft emails or proposals and so on. Curation is about collecting information and putting it into one place so that we can access it and analyze it more effectively. Clarification is about research. It's about understanding, what the information that we have in the organization or from outside the organization, what does that mean? How does that apply to us? Cognition is about thinking. It's about asking questions, about posing what if. What if we did this? What if we went down that way? So it's a way of thinking through problems. Communication, we use a lot of this. I assume this thing is capturing the words that are being used, and they're documenting it in a transcript, right? And then that transcript can go and be analyzed afterwards, and you can figure out some trends in the conversation. You can pick up some nuggets of helpful information. So communication, and then coordination, which is really a way of saying that we can use AI to coordinate the efforts of different teams or different activities or different processes, different technologies, products, and so on in the organization to achieve an outcome. That has more to do with the kind of automation, the RPA, robotic process automation type functionality that we've been familiar with using for many years. So these are the kind of things that we're going to have to support. Now, what's really interesting about these for me is the fact that all of these are embedded within the business, right? These are not IT. I mean, we can use them in IT, but they're not IT capabilities that we're managing and then providing to the business. These are things that are happening inside the business itself. If we want to be meaningful supporters of AI in the organization, we have to understand these activities. We have to understand what is being created, why, who's doing it, what is the business outcome, what information is being curated, from where, is it reliable, is it accurate, etc. So if we as service managers and product managers want to be really effective professionals in our field, we now have to go even further into the business organization to understand how they're using the technology. And this is something, unfortunately, that many of us in the industry have failed to do. Many of us in the industry have started moving back further into the back office. Oh, we know how to manage cloud servers. We know how to manage storage in the cloud. So we're really going to focus all of our expertise on doing that. So we are moving ourselves further and further away from the business, whereas what we should be doing is moving ourselves further and further into the business. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. Right. So what are people expecting us to give them with AI? Here we are, data analytics and synthesizing insights. 45% of the use cases for AI expect us to be able to provide accurate data analytics and to be able to synthesize insights effectively. This is fantastic. I can tell you right now that we're not delivering on that. Why? Because organizations are struggling with the basic elements of data governance. So, for example, for AI to be effective, let's just take a very simple example. I'm trying not to mention names, but we'll mention one and mention them all. Copilot and Claude and ChatGPT and various others, we're using them all, and we're using them to define a sales forecast. So what I'm doing is I'm analyzing all of the data of product sales in my organization, and I'm using that and I'm combining with information from outside the organization, and I compile that all and ask it for a predictive outcome. How much of our product am I going to sell in the next quarter, and why is that number like that? Is it going up? Is it going down? What's causing it to do that? Great. AI is fantastic at doing that. But here's the problem. We tried this with one organization. The sales manager got one figure. The individuals who are managing regions got a completely different number when you added them up. When they looked at the situation, they realized that the sales manager had different access permissions than the people who were reporting at a regional level. And those access permissions were giving access to data that was inconsistent. So instead of each of the region managers having a subset of data that when you added it all together equaled what the sales director saw, it was not. It was inconsistent. Why? Because the data access had been set up incorrectly. This is a very simple data governance issue, and we're still struggling with this. So here's some of the things already you can see. Wow, organization is trying to get us to manage all of these wonderful benefits of AI, and that's what they're expecting of us. But our real value as service management professionals is to be able to prepare the groundwork so that these AI tools can work effectively. Here's the problem, though. Everybody focuses on functionality. Wow, look at this AI tool. It can accurately predict the forecast of sales in our company. This is amazing. And then you go to them and say, no, it's not amazing because we have to do this data governance. We have to make sure these devices are set up securely. Well, on the one side, you have all the functionality. Wow, this is fantastic. Look at how much money we're going to make. On the other side, oh, you can't do that until you do these things. Look how much money we're going to spend, right? And there's this tendency when it comes to AI to focus on the promises, but not take adequate account of what it takes to deliver on those promises. This is our job. This is what we excel at. This is what we have been doing for the last 35 years with ITIL, right? We're good at it. We have a great contribution to make to AI, but we need to be very clear of what that contribution is and how it is going to enable the success. Right. So what we don't want AI to do are these things. And again, you're going to find people in the organization are going to try this stuff. Why don't we use AI to do quality control, to test the quality of code before we roll it out? Yeah, great advice there. It doesn't work because it doesn't know all of the context involved in that application or in that testing. So we really don't want to be too reliant on AI for things that still require a large amount of human judgment. We'll talk about that later, but just some ideas. Here's the thing that's very interesting to me. This was 3 years ago, and we see who is initiating and paying for AI projects. We find that 28% of those, this was 3 years ago, 28% of those projects were being initiated and funded by the C-suite. What does that mean? It means that the CEO went to the CIO and said, you will roll out the next generation of generative AI tools. You will roll out the next generation of agentic AI tools. Don't tell me all the problems. Don't tell me all the things you cannot do. Just get it done. And I'm paying for it, so you just better do it. Right? That's the attitude of that 28%. So 28% of the work that we're being expected to do is kind of being thrust upon us from outside. And the people who are making those decisions do not always understand the technology management realities of those decisions. So very important, if we're going to do AI properly, we need to have good structures in place that enable us to govern these decisions effectively. That's the bad news. The good news is we have been doing this for 35 years, right? This is nothing new. You may think that because AI is new, that AI management is new. It is not. The lessons that we learned in moving from mainframe to client server are just as valid as they are for moving from client server to web-based, which were just as valid for the lessons that we learned from moving from web-based to mobile technology, which are just as valid for the lessons we learned in moving to cloud, which are now just as valid for the lessons that we are learning moving to AI. The temptation, though, is that because AI is a new technology, we need new disciplines, new capabilities, different ways of managing. That is false. We have to rely on the tried and trusted methods that we have known and used effectively in our organizations over the past decades. We have to change them. We have to adapt them, yes, but we still need to rely on that body of knowledge that we can trust. Okay. How do we support the organization's AI strategy? And here I want to be very clear about our role, because our role is changing. So in ITIL version 3, I see a number of you from ITIL version 2 and 3. Really good to see you, because you've lived this journey with me. My first certificate, by the way, was ITIL V1. We didn't call it V1, it was just called ITIL back then. So I've been involved with ITIL since 1992. And I started my ITIL journey in South Africa. So, and my did a lot of work throughout Southern Africa in introducing ITIL and working with organizations. So I'm very familiar with some of the dynamics that you're facing right now, although today I live in Canada. But here's the way it used to be. In ITIL V2 and V3, this is what it was. We had an IT department. All technology came through the IT department. There was no sense in which a business unit could go and buy technology somewhere else, right? It all came from us. If they did go and buy it somewhere else, they were called shadow IT or rogue IT, and we shut that down as quickly as we could, right? So we provide the technology in the form of services. That technology is used to provide services to external customers. We're all very familiar with this flow. But the key thing here is that we are the single point of control for all of these blue services here, these technology-based services. We create the value. The business units deliver something that's valuable to the customers, and when the customers pay, we realize the value, as long as what they paid was more than what we spent. By the way, this is financial, but it works in non-financial ways as well. You can have objectives that relate to sustainability, social responsibility.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
There you go. We just have to start the recording again. So it can also be related to meeting the activities of a government agency, like issuing a passport or managing a trade within the country. So these value statements are about us being able to support the business in meeting its objectives. This is great. And you can see in ITIL version 3, we were in total control of how those services were created and delivered to the business units. Very straightforward. From 2012 onwards, this completely changed, and it changed because of the cloud, and it changed because of the use of social media. It changed because consumers were able to interact directly with suppliers using the internet and using the cloud. We see that now cloud applications become available to the business, and suddenly we have a bunch of internal IT service providers within the organization. There they all are. So we still have the traditional IT department. It's there. You can see the blue here is technical capability, very strong on technical capability. We do still have that business acumen. We still have some, but our main benefit is here in the technology. Now on this side, this one second from the right, we have the organization unit that is very strong on business, and it has a layer of digital capability, but not very significant. This could be, for example, the sales department, whose main focus is on working with customers and relationship management. Yes, they use Salesforce automation, but it's not their core capability. This organizational unit on the right here has about an equal capability of digital technology and business capability. This could be, for example, it could be digital marketing. And they have a very strong digital capability here. So what we've seen is that the management of digital technology, and this includes AI, is moving increasingly into the business. I did some research and I got some figures. There was no definitive figure, but the research suggested that anywhere between 40%, 40, and 60% of the traditional IT department's roles have shifted to somewhere else in the organization. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that's what's happened, right? So everything we used to do in the V3 days is still done in the organization, but it's done in a distributed way. And our way of managing needs to reflect that. And AI is one of the things that is accelerating that distribution of management. So how do we, as service and product management professionals, how do we stay on top of that? How do we coordinate that? Well, we do that through value streams. Those of you who've done ITIL 4 or have started on the ITIL version 5 certification will know all about value streams. Value streams are the activities that the organization does to create and deliver value. Digital technology contributes to that value, except now it's not just one department, it's all of these departments. So part of understanding how to manage digital technology, including AI, is about understanding how that digital technology is used in each of these organizational units. Remember I said right at the beginning, being able to manage AI is about understanding how it is being used in the business. This is exactly what I meant. We also now have to figure out the role of partners, because we're not going to do this all internally. Where are the ITIL processes? They're still there. This is great. Remember I said that we're going to apply the decades of experience and knowledge that we have. There it is. Incident management has been there since version 1. In version 1, it was covered in the help desk book, but it was there. It was in version 1. It's still there in version 5. Does it look the same? No, it's a little bit different, but it's still there. We have a basic capability and a way of managing that has been consistently valid from ITIL version 1 until today, over 35 years. And that is, when something breaks and the service is not available, you need to be able to restore the service. It doesn't matter what technology you're using. That is a basic capability we need, and that is what's covered in these arrows between the organizational units. Now, we still have the suppliers. We're not the only ones that are procuring equipment and services from those suppliers. So we need a way of managing across that ecosystem. Okay, so there's the background for AI. Now here's again, I'm going to repeat something I said earlier. If your ITIL project is only going to focus on the service desk, the incident management component, and maybe a bit of problem management, and maybe a bit of centralized change coordination for shared services, then you will not be involved in all of these activities over here. The only thing you will do is be able to respond to issues as they come up. And these will typically be major because they're going to involve security, they're going to involve risk to business critical services and so on. So you're moving yourself backwards into a reactive mode. The best thing you can do is figure out what these value streams are in your organization and get to work with the organization units and the way in which they're using technology to help them understand how to do that better and be a resource to them. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, here's how we do this. This is a little bit of I just gave you a massive task. I'm going to show you how we do this. It's actually not as difficult as it sounds. First of all, we need to understand how the organization is using AI today. And today, 85% of the use of AI is around day-to-day operations. It's about somebody who's using an AI tool to automate what they do on a day-to-day, whether that's writing an email, whether it's creating an agent that takes care of certain automated activities for them. It's day-to-day operations. About 10% of the use of AI is about management. It's about coordinating management processes like supply chain, doing supply chain forecasting. It's about understanding, for example, how many incidents we can have a common root cause and how we can improve the ability to handle those incidents, right? That's more of a management level kind of activity, about 10%. Round about 5% of the work that we do is related to strategy. Now, when I say strategy, what I mean here is that we're using AI specifically as a way to create new products or new capabilities or to enter new markets. In other words, we are growing our organization beyond where it is today. So day-to-day operations management is all about how do we execute business as usual. Strategy is about how do we move to the next level of the future. And ecosystem, the final one, is when we change the world. We're not there yet, right? So I think if you added it all up, we've got about 85% day-to-day operations, about 80% day-to-day operations, 15% management, about 5% strategy. That's 100%. We do not yet know of an organization that has changed the way in which the entire world works. It happened with cloud. It happened with, for example, Amazon, Uber, Netflix, Airbnb, and so on. We know those stories. So we know that they did it with the cloud, but we don't know who's doing that or who's going to be doing that with AI. There are some indications of who that could be, but it has not yet actually led to the wholesale change of the world. So we've got to watch that one. Okay, what does this mean in terms of my profession as a service and product management professional? Here's what these projects are about. So if I'm doing this day-to-day operations, then my focus on procedure, activity, and operations transformation. It's about how I do my work better. What that means for me as a service management professional is the ability to understand the procedures that are being automated, what activities are being automated, what data they're using, and how those all join together in dependencies. I can do this because I'm a service management professional. I know how to do this. If I'm in management, I'm looking at end-to-end process flows. I'm looking at how they work. I'm looking at efficiency. I'm looking at effectiveness. If I'm looking at strategy, I'm a senior architect or an executive in the organization, and I'm constantly monitoring the environment to see whether this new technology is offering me any new business opportunities. The question is, how do I link these layers? And this is where we shine. This is where our profession is amazing, because what we can do is we can look at day-to-day operations and we can say, I know how you used to do this in traditional technology, but now you're using AI. I can see what you did, and I can see most of it. Okay, so you created a nice picture of yourself with a superhero outfit. Amazing, great, go ahead, continue doing that. I'm not interested. You carry on doing that. As long as your boss is prepared to pay for the tokens, we're fine. But that user over there has found a use for AI that is going to change the way in which we work today. And this is not the first time this has happened, by the way. When mobile phones were introduced, back in the 2010s, right? Even before that, I remember an insurance company letting the employees bring their phones to work and use them for work purposes. And what one of the employees did in this insurance company was to go out to process claims and just take pictures on their phone and upload it into the system. Before, it would have to go to a claims center. There would have to be professional photography and damage assessment. What they did is they took the picture on their phone, uploaded it, and the damage assessment could be done remotely. It saved them days of time. It saved them how many people that were working on that process. And it was really good for business because customers could get claims processed within a few hours. That then led to additional uses of cell phone technology. And even now today, those claims are being processed using AI. So what happened there is that somebody saw the potential of the change in day-to-day operations and turned that into a strategic differentiator for that organization. Now, the only people that can do that are the people who link day-to-day operations and who understand day-to-day operations with the strategy or future direction of the company. That's us. That's service management professionals. That's product management professionals. This is what we do. The question is, have we started effectively doing it within our organization today? If not, you can. The guidance is there. It's in ITIL. It's in other places as well. You can use the same techniques that we use to manage every wave of emerging technology to manage this new wave of technology. To make it a little bit easier, what we did is we did some analysis as to the way in which organizations use AI and the way they manage AI. We found out that some organizations use AI in a very standardized way. For example, we're going to give everybody a Copilot license. We're going to enable it for certain SharePoint access and certain applications. And that's how we're going to use it. And we're going to train them on how to use that. Highly standardized. It almost becomes a commodity that anybody can use. On the other hand, we have technology that is highly emergent. Oh, we're going to use, for example, Claude to help us write code. And that's new. It's different. We've never done this before, and it's not commoditized. We don't know where it's going to go. Highly emergent. How we manage IT. On the one hand, very centralized, and on the other hand, could be decentralized. Now, what we then did is we took those two continua and we turned one on its end, and we now end up with 4 quadrants. What this does is it helps us to focus management attention on specific areas. For example, the first one, the way that you manage standardized components using centralized control is through a centralized IT department or centralized center of excellence, and you use standardized components, existing solutions, and if you're going to replace functionality, it's like for like. You're not going to introduce something new while you're replacing the old. You're just replacing what you're doing today with something that does exactly the same thing, just better. Decentralized but standardized means that anybody in the organization can use it, but we don't have oversight on how it's used. It means that we just provide the licenses, we make sure that they're secure, we make sure that the data access has been provided, but then it's up to the user or the manager of that department how it's used. So that's a type 3, and usually the best place to do that is experiment with it in a lab. Type 4, there are times when you want to use this, but it is very risky. And typically the times when you use it are when you're trying to spin off a new business and you don't want to impact your current operations. So separate it out and you it. Managers is to understand the different types of AI, the different tools being used, how very specific types of AI application. There is a white paper on this. It is the IT governance white paper. It's available on ITIL.com. Just get onto ITIL.com, search for AI governance, get all kinds of information. And there is the quickly because we know about these. The first one is the impact on operating models. Be aware that influence the use of your current model. So before you introduce AI, understand which of your or is going to culture. You may think you can control it. You may think that you have a handle on this, but any kind of digital technology will change the culture of the organization in ways that you cannot anticipate. The best thing that we can do as IT professionals or as digital technology professionals is to monitor very closely what changes are happening. Salesforce, everybody communicated by email. When Salesforce was introduced into the company, they had a chatter facility. That became the system of record. And if you did not figure out how to change your way of thinking from email to chatter, you were lost. You would miss important announcements. You would get lost. And we found a lot of people losing their way in the organization. The culture of the organization changed in ways that nobody thought because of this chatter tool. The next thing I want to point out is that as we're introducing AI, we will have a widening capability deficit. This is true with every new technology. It doesn't matter what. So we start at generation 1 mainframe, generation 2 client server, generation 3, whatever you want to do. That we may be even at generation 6 now with AI. The point here is that every time you introduce a new technology, you increase the demand for capability. Why? Because you're not just switching from mainframe to client server. You're adding client server. Then you're adding web-based, then you're adding mobile, then you're adding AI. It's cumulative. And your demand for new skills keeps on growing. But in reality, and so with every new generation of technology, the skills gap widens. And we have a significant skills gap now with AI, not only in terms of how to use AI, but in terms of how to manage it, in terms of how to manage it securely, and in terms of how to govern it effectively so that we're not exposing the organization to risk. There is a huge demand for this. And so one of the things that I will tell you, the advice that I will give you as service managers and product managers is get to understand this technology. Study it, become experts, because it is going to be absolutely essential. It's all very well that you're able to know how to use AI. It's all very well that you understand what the technology is. But we as service managers and as product managers have an additional skill. And that is that we can identify the dependencies between the way the AI works and what the business is doing with it. Nobody else in the organization can do that. That's on us. So get yourself skilled in understanding the AI tools and get yourself skilled in how to do things like analyze operating models, analyze value streams. The one is a technology first decision in every case. You've seen it already. I know it says AI first, your best strategy for the future, something like that. You see it in the airport as you go through or on TV. It's like everybody's talking about AI first, AI first. Be very careful. We did this with cloud. Remember everybody talking about cloud first? 3 years ago, after cloud first, where everything got moved into the cloud, 65% of all cloud migrations were put on hold. Why? We still couldn't predict the performance of cloud solutions once we migrated them. And it turned out that we were not achieving the promises of cloud. Many cloud architectures were reversed from the cloud. Now that's expensive. You migrated them into the cloud, now you're migrating them back again, instead of just keeping them where they were the first time. So AI first is not the answer. AI appropriate, absolutely. Now, developing a new product, a new line of business, AI first, great. It's a great design principle, right? Think about what AI can do for you because it's the latest technology. Fantastic. But AI first is not a mechanism, it's not a decision or a strategy that should be applied to every single technology across the organization. Sometimes AI last is the best approach for a particular piece of technology or for a particular service. So be very careful. It's AI appropriate. Sometimes AI first is appropriate, but sometimes it's not. And we as service and product managers understand the difference. Then also just realize that every time you adopt a new tool, there are going to be some parts of the organizations that are going to rush ahead, but there are going to be other parts of the organizations which stay behind because they have regulations that they have to comply with or whatever. Be aware that there is this mismatch and you are going to be the person in the middle. So you need to develop those diplomatic skills. I'll never forget I was working in a health insurance and they had this situation. The health insurance company is heavily regulated in the US and it's all based on mainframe, or was back then. It was all based on mainframe. This was not long ago. It was only about 7 years ago. All based on mainframe, heavily regulated. But all of a sudden, somebody in the government decided we will allow these companies to go out and get individual businesses. They can go on the open market and they can attract people. So these companies started introducing product teams that developed amazing new ways of reaching people with apps in their gyms and advertising and so on. And what eventually happened is you have two companies in one. You have one side of the company that's focusing, spending huge amounts of money to attract individual consumers. And we find those who are managing the core of the business, the traditional business, we have budget cuts and we have instability on those systems because that's seen as legacy. They're both just as important. And the challenge of a good service manager and a good product manager is to be able to link the two and show the value of both. What about our careers? And I have just a couple more slides and then I will be done. The first thing is we have an important myth to dispel. The myth is that AI will replace people. It does not. What it is going to do is it's going to enhance or extend human activity or human endeavor. It's going to enable us to do things with the skills that we have that we were not able to do before. Now, people who are not able to embrace that and not able to use that are going to find it very difficult to survive in this new world where we have AI-enhanced human activity, because AI-enhanced human activity requires a good understanding of prompts. It requires a good understanding of how to automate types of work, how to link to different sources of data and information. Now, if you can't develop those skills, you're not going to be able to use AI, and you will find that your career will start going backwards. That's inevitable. We've seen this before. AI is not the first time this has happened. And most of you on this call will not remember this, but I remember the days when before email, when every message was sent by telex. We had a telex room and we had telex operators. And then along comes email. What happens is all of us start using email. The telex operators lose their job. But what happens instead? What happens instead is that we have an IT department emerging that takes on the responsibility of maintaining email systems and so on. We actually start employing more people in IT than we laid off out of the telex room. Now, those telex operators in the organization I worked for weren't just laid off. They were actually reskilled, taught, educated on how to use the skills that they had in this new environment. Some of them embraced it, and they grew into very successful IT professionals. Others said, this is too much for me. They retired. They went and did something else, opened a flower shop or something like that. Right? That choice has existed every time a new technology comes on board, and AI is going to be no exception. But that does not mean that AI replaces human beings at all. So please bear that in mind. What it does mean, though, for us as professionals is that something is going to start happening. And that is that we've seen this over the last 20 years, especially. We've seen the role of ITSM shrinking. So we've seen, people using ITIL. We used to use it for everything to manage IT. And now we see organizations using it only for tech support. And what's happened there? Well, what's happened there is that different organizations and individuals have seen a great idea in ITIL and said, this is fantastic, but there's not enough information. I'm going to take that information and I'm going to build on it and create something that is very specialized and new. So we see the emergence of all kinds of disciplines, FinOps, technology business management, site reliability engineering, XLM, AI ops, you name it. Well, what's happened here is we've taken some very important function out of ITIL and we've expanded on it for a very specific context. FinOps is about financial management in the cloud. Financial management is covered in ITIL, but FinOps took it one level further. It's great. The work they've done is fantastic. This is really good stuff, by the way. I'm not being critical at all. The problem, though, is that we have now ended up as professionals with an unbelievable array of available resources and frameworks that we can draw from. Which ones do we use? How do we combine them? How do we apply them into the job of AI? Well, this is where ITIL version 5 becomes really important. ITIL version 5 says, look, we recognize that all of this work has been done. It's amazing. We don't want to replace it. We think it should even be done more. But what's missing is, so we have here, we have a lot of decentralization and specialization, but we have this AI coming along, which is accelerating this. So what you're going to see is you're going to see even more of those little green circles emerging. It's going to get even more difficult to manage this. So what are we going to do about this? So what we're going to do is we're going to build a framework. And we're not going to try and answer all of the questions for every scenario in that framework. We're not going to go into detailed calculations of how to do financial analysis in the cloud or financial analysis of AI. We're going to set the basis. Here is what needs to be done for financial management. Here's what needs to be done for business relationship management. Okay, we're going to set that basis. But what we're going to do is provide a means to orchestrate all of these specialized areas so that we can provide end-to-end value. And the way we do that is through merging the product and service life cycles so that we can map all of these frameworks and their roles into those life cycles. And then we reintegrate the core disciplines. That's not to say we're going to take over DevOps, not to say that we're now going to become the FinOps expert of the world. It's to say, if you're going to do FinOps, that's great, but here's how it links to availability management. Here's how it links to disaster recovery planning, right? That is what we're going to build. So digital product and service management is what ITIL is all about. And part of that is to reintegrate and orchestrate all of these areas. Now, I'm going to end with something. I'm going to send these slides. You'll be able to have access to them. I don't want to go through them in detail because they're really just there for reference. Remember the 4 layers of change that were introduced by AI? There they are. Well, what I did is I went through each one of those and I asked the question, if I am a digital service and product or product manager, what skills do I need to be able to meet the challenges of using AI at each of these levels? And I put together a table. So if you're wanting to change the world, then this is what you're going to have to do. If you're wanting to introduce a new strategy to your organization, this is what you have to do. If you want to be a better manager and optimize your existing processes, this is what you do, etc. Right? So take these slides, use them as a reference. You're welcome to them. And of course, always remember that there is the ITIL core guidance available to you. These contain the fundamental building blocks that you're going to need to be successful in an AI world. There are the practices. These are for people who are involved with individual practices like incident management or problem management, service level management, and so on, change enablement. You can stop at those stations there, or if you want to, and you want to grow your career more into a management space, you can take the ITIL transformation, which talks all about how digital transformation changes organizations, and you can then be called a practice manager. For those of you who are already managers and who are really wanting to know more about how you coordinate these teams and align them across the life cycle, then the managing professional is for you. And there are 3 modules here. It's ITIL product, ITIL service that looks at the life cycle from 2 different perspectives, and then ITIL experience, which ties that all together, pulled together again by ITIL transformation, and you then become a managing professional. If you're an executive or a senior technologist and you really want to come to grips with how this new technology is going to change the strategy of the organization, then the ITIL strategy stream is there for you. Of course, if you do all 3, you can become an ITIL master. So just from an ITIL perspective, these are the resources available to you. That's the official scheme, official scheme. And the AI governance module is due out imminently. Expect to see an announcement in the coming days. So I didn't write a conclusion. I'm just going to leave it there because I want to give opportunity for questions or to answer any concerns or comments. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and so that you can see me. I know it's not the most attractive thing in the world, but at least you should be able to see me now. Yeah, there we are. Okay, I see some hands clapping. Thank you very much for that. But are there any questions or comments?
All right, thank you. Wow. Okay. David, I think on a scale of 1 to 10, my expectation was somewhere around 9 or 10. And then you've taken the thing to a different level, and then this is like 20 something over 10 or something like that. So, big thank you. Big thank you for this. I think the conversations you've had around AI are critical for every organization as it is, especially the thinking around what should we be doing with AI? How do we approach it, especially as an organization, not so much as individuals, and how the intersection between AI and the digital product and service management in itself. So this is a lot. I mean, it's a lot to take in. You've spoken for like an entire hour, and it's a lot. It's almost like you've delivered an entire semester or course in 1 hour. So, but let me take questions from anybody. So, do you have questions? You've got thoughts? What would you want David to speak to in the next 10 minutes, and then we'll round this up. We have a couple of things that we have. We have some offers for some organizations, but I'll speak about that in a minute. But let me just take questions, thoughts, and opinion. What do you think, everybody that is on the call? What's the big challenge with where do you see this challenge around the adoption of AI? Is it around data? Is it around privacy? Is it around data protection? Is it around security in itself? Where is the big challenge? Let me hear from anybody. What are your thoughts? What are your opinion? I mean, one of the things I was going to ask David, and so maybe you should take this down, David. Somebody had asked me, but it would be nice for you to speak to it. Somebody said that, are we saying that we've brought in the entire product management, the discipline, the methodology, and all that has got to do with product management? Have we infused all that into ITSM? Is that really the background for DPSM, to say that DPSM is equal to ITSM plus product management? So that's definitely one of the things I would want you to speak to. Another question that somebody had asked me is that within ITIL, do you have, or do we have, a defined AI adoption methodology? Do we have something that says that, this is how organizations should adopt AI? That do we have anything like that? So I also like you to speak to that, because I had a few people who came in and then left for one thing or the other, but they sent me some of these questions as it is. I'm looking through some of the questions that I have, and I think, just give me 1 second. I think the other one that this person has said, yes, it was around tooling, that it seems, yes, this is the third one. Somebody says, it seems like ITIL version 5 has gone ahead of the available tools in the market. Like that it seems the traditional service management tools are now playing catch up. So to ITIL version 5, in the past, you could almost do like a one-to-one mapping around the processes in ITIL and the capabilities and the features of the available tools in the market. But somebody has said to me that ITIL version 5 has so many new concepts inside of it that it now seems like none of the tools are really aligned. So it would be nice to get your thoughts along those lines. So I think we'll keep it to those three for now. If any other thing comes up, because I want us to finish this in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Sure.
So please go ahead.
I will. And there was another question that I saw come up, which is really interesting about how the pace of AI changed and how do we keep pace with it when entry-level people are already getting laid off, and we haven't even finished our strategy or our adoption of AI. It's incredibly fast. So let me, to that point, I'll address that too. But to the point of digital product and service management, the reason that is like that is because we've been seeing the world of dev and the world of ops going closer and closer together over the years. It started in even before DevOps became a thing. For example, if you read the 2007 edition of Service Operation, you will see a diagram in there which talks about the need to integrate dev and ops in every stage of the software development lifecycle. So we were already starting to talk about that officially back then. It's only gotten more and more important to integrate those two worlds. So DevOps, what DevOps did was it articulated it as an infinity loop where you have development on the one side and ops on the other side. Microsoft did the same thing with the Microsoft Solutions Framework and Microsoft Operations Framework. The major issue between those approaches is that inevitably the dev side of the loop covered products and the ops side of the loop covered services. And there wasn't a nice, neat way to map. And so you very often found that you have great quality products moving into operations, but you have services that have dependencies beyond what's in the products. So, for example, collaboration between products and so on. So that's one of the reasons, is that we had to really bring those two worlds closer together, find a way of mapping the one side of the loop to the other side of the loop more effectively. And what we learned is that it wasn't about dev and ops. It was about this concept of managing products versus the concept of managing services. And it turned out that both dev and ops are involved in different ways in both products and in services. So that research led us to the integration of the digital product and service lifecycle. And in addition to that, it was kind of validated, even well, not validated. I guess we're kind of forced into the situation. Not forced. Things are changing so quickly that what we've learned is that in an AI-enabled world, the loop of dev and ops are no longer a nice, neat infinity cycle. They're actually collapsing into each other. So CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, is now not just a theory. It's not just something you manage. It's just something that happens. It's something that every user can do when they generate a line of code, right? In their agentic AI tool. Dev and ops are one and the same thing. What's different is, what do we control as a product and what do we control as a service? Control's a negative word. How do we facilitate the creation of valuable products, and how do we facilitate the use of effective and efficient services? That's part of the same discussion. And so that's where DPSM comes in. And it's to the next point, I'm going to cover the tooling one next, and then I'll come back to adoption. You're absolutely right about the tooling. Whoever said that, and I saw a couple of people weighing in on this. Yes, absolutely right. ITIL has gone beyond what the tools today are proposing or capable of. I mean, be very careful of what I say there. It's not ITIL that went beyond the tools, right? ITIL is a snapshot of the industry. What we do is we go around the industry and we look at organizations and we say, what are you guys doing? And they'll say, well, we're doing this. And we say, well, how do you measure its success? And they say, well, we measured its success because it enabled these things to happen. Oh, okay, that's effective. Well, let's document that and let's include it in ITIL. Well, it turns out that the things that organizations are doing in the industry, the leading organizations are doing in the industry, are beyond what the traditional tools are capable of. Now, what's more concerning is not that the tools have not caught up. You can place that responsibility on the tool vendors, right? Somebody will catch up. I have no doubt of that, right? As soon as they figure out what's going on, you're going to see tools that will solve these problems. I don't have a problem with that. The bigger problem is this, is that the tools are not moving forward because the majority of their customers are still stuck in a previous generation. So we still have a large number of organizations that are still stuck trying to solve the problem of incident, problem, and change enablement. And they have not yet moved past that into how do we enable the valuable use of AI within our organization. And the result of that is that there's a gap between the lagging organizations and the leading organizations. Most of the tools that exist in the market today are aimed at the lagging organizations because it's a bigger market. However, most of where the industry is going is in the leading organizations. And what we'll find is those leading organizations will grow, more and more people will become like them, and the organizations that cannot become like them will fade away. This is exactly what has happened in every wave of technology up until now. So that's my bigger concern. It's not that the tools haven't caught up. They'll catch up. There's no issue. I have no doubt of that. The bigger issue is how are organizations closing the gap between between companies and organizations that are leading the way. How are they doing that? And that's a strategic thing. And my concern is that there are not enough of us, service and product managers, who are taking that strategic challenge up. I'm a bit biased because my contribution to ITIL has always been around strategy. So I've always been a person who thinks strategy, but then I also wrote the service operation book. So I kind of fit both sides. But for me, that challenge is something that we have to take very, very seriously. It's how do we understand the operations that we do today, and how do we move it into the company of tomorrow? That's the key issue there. The tools, they'll catch up. Now, as far as AI adoption goes, and really how do we, we always had this joke that we made is like, implementing service management is like changing the wheels of the car while the car is still driving, right? We used to joke about that, and we thought it was really difficult. And now we're in the middle of AI, and suddenly, we're now trying to change the wheels of an entire convoy of Uber drivers while all of those drivers are picking up passengers, right? It's like, this becomes so complicated. And the reality is that while this is happening, and the person who asked the question was talking about the fact that there are entry-level, I think, Jackie, you asked the question, there are entry-level people getting laid off while this is going on. In my opinion, it's just my opinion, I think that is the most irresponsible thing that we could be doing as an industry. We are betting the future of companies on a technology that has not been tested, whose future is uncertain. Every day we're seeing some new AI tool being discredited because of its failure to do something, or because of the risk associated with it. And yet we're making decisions to lay off entry-level people because of this. I think it's irresponsible. I also think that it is not as much driven by AI as it is being driven by the fact that we are facing some serious economic issues, especially in North America, and that AI is being used as an excuse. That's my personal opinion. I'm pretty sure that you will find somebody argue with me on that, but I strongly believe that we are getting ahead of ourselves. We're not acting in the interest of our companies. So that being said, how do we get on top of this accelerating change? And I have to come back to what I said before. You don't do that by increasing adoption rates. You do it by going back a step and analyzing your operating model. It's something we haven't done. And I know I keep seeing this again and again and again. And every time I see it and I comment on it, people think it can't be that simple. Here's what it is. For example, I was working in a hospital group. The hospital group data center was managing a server farm. And that server farm was being maintained every Sunday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, because they thought this is the best time I mean, obviously, right? 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Who's up at 2 o'clock on a Sunday? We're going to maintain the server farm at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, it turned out that server farm was being used to support the emergency room in that hospital, and it was being used specifically for patient intake. Well, when they did some investigation, they realized that 2 o'clock on Sunday morning is the busiest time of the ER of any of the times during the week. So we were bringing down the servers in the data center at the busiest, most critical time when those systems were absolutely essential for the health and safety of patients entering the hospital. Why did we do that? Well, because nobody had sat down and mapped the server to the business outcome. It's a fundamental service management skill. It's a fundamental service management discipline. When I did some further research into this, what I was told is, oh, but we've just adopted a new tool and the tool does that for us. Let me show you. And what they did is they showed me, I'm not going to mention tool names, they showed me this, had a beautiful diagram of how every server and every application was mapped. Nowhere on that diagram did it show me that that server supported patient intake in the ER, and at the busiest time of ER emergency room was on a Sunday morning at 2 a.m. So the mapping that we're using for services is hopelessly inadequate. And until we're prepared to take that challenge and deal with it, and that means defining your operating model, because the service mapping is part of your operating model, not prepared to do the work of defining your operating model effectively, you are going to have to continue on a trial and error basis with your AI adoption. And so it looks like you're moving very quickly, but all you're doing is really failing very fast and replacing it with something that you think is going to work, and then it doesn't. So we're now in probably about the 15th or 20th cycle of replacement AI tools in 2 years. That's not fast adoption. That is going backwards at the speed of light. So sorry, I'm very outspoken about this, but I just feel very strongly that the secret to fast and successful AI adoption is to use the disciplines that we grew up with. Double down on them because they really work. Thanks, Jackie. Good question, and thanks for the thumbs up there. Great. I think I came to the end of the list there. Is there something I did not cover?
In reality, right, David, we can be here all day just listening.
Yes, we can.
To you, right? So, before you send me a huge invoice, I better let you go. I better let you go. So everybody in the chat room, a big thank you. Please, round of applause for David. He's got almost like half a century worth of experience to share with us. So there's so many things we can keep asking and we can keep talking about, and all of us will be here literally forever. But we're going to follow you on LinkedIn, and we'll follow all the things you're writing and things like that. So David, we can't thank you enough for taking the time out to do this. This is not a ploy to sell training vouchers or exam or anything like that. It's really just to educate the entire should I say community, if not the world in itself, on where these things are going and what we all should be taking into keen consideration. So we really do appreciate you. Once again, we cannot thank you enough. So everybody, please, some great words in the chat room. Your big takeaway from this session, on the AI side, on the DPSM side, on the ITIL evolution and things like that. So please share your testimonies in the chat room and even on the Training Nights channel. So my colleague Bono has put all the Training Nights channels, so please follow us. For the organizations that are here, the ones that have come as an organization like Customs and all that, that have, I think, about 5 or more persons, please reach out to us. We're going to hold a free half-day workshop for each of your organizations. The ones that have come, I think we put it to 5 persons and above. So, but even if it's and you're an organization and it's the IT department, we're going to hold a free half-day ITIL adoption workshop for your organization. So please reach out to Bodu. Please put your email address in the chat room. Reach us on any of our channels. Follow us, and then we'll be happy to do that. I really do believe in ITIL. My years of experience are not half as much as David's, but yeah, I think I've also done it for about I mean, 2003 till today is about 23 years that I've been hanging around ITIL, doing it for different organizations on the tool side, on the process side, on the documentation side, across board, and even apart from the training and certification side of things, but on the actual adoption and alignment side of things. So I'm sure we can support a lot of your organizations, and I'm certain that in my lifetime, in the lifetime of Training Nights, I'm certain we've worked with upwards of 100 organizations, maybe 150 organizations, or within that period or more around the ITIL adoption and things like that. So please reach out to us, follow us on all our platforms, and we will come back to you. And if you can prove to us that you had 4 or 5 people here, we will definitely do that. And secondly, for everybody that has attended today, we're going to send you a quick assessment for you to do. And if you pass it, you will get your certificate for this particular session, just to be certain that so that you can use it for your CPDs and things like that. So that it's not just that you attended, but that you successfully completed the session. So we have some questions already. There's not a lot. It's just about 20 key questions. You pass it, you generate your certificate that says that you attended this AI and ITIL session as it is. So you all get that certificate of successful completion of this particular session and introduction to ITIL 5 as it is. So once again, David, thank you very much. We appreciate you. We appreciate everybody that is taking the time out to be here. All of you have left your job because this is a work day and this is work time. You've all left all the things that you're doing just to come to listen to this. We appreciate you, and I hope you've gotten value out of it. But we'll share the slides with everybody because you must have registered with your correct email address. And if you feel you haven't done that, you can always send us an email. We'll get the slides from David and we'll share it with everybody and all the other things thereafter. So once again, thank you very much. David, thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. God bless you. I just mentioned to Romeo, I shared a picture of you taking the session. So a big thank you to Romeo who organized this session and dragged you into it for us. So once again, thank you. I'll definitely catch up with you. So everybody, thank you once again, and to the Training Heights team that put this entire session together. Thank you. We'll all come back to you and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Cheers, bye, everyone. Thank you.
Recording stopped.